Aggressive expansion. Ignore it at your peril. There are generally two accepted ways of dealing with it, either by stacking aggressive expansion reduction modifiers in combination with improved relations to make your aggressive expansion take down faster, as well as reducing its generation in the first place, or taking the second approach, namely following the stab enemies of the state policy until your enemies are so few and far between that they are unable to mount an effective opposition. Now you can probably guess which policy I personally prefer, but I have to admit, there is actually a third way. Now, I am here making the video, but to be clear, I did not discover this, far from. The button we are going to be using is the -3 aggressive expansion from the Prussian missions, but at 100 dip a click, that is a touch problematic to spam. Well, Commercial Method 28 approached me with a DM on Reddit of all places with his discovery, which I'm not going to reveal at the moment, that basically enables this build to be viable. Anyway, we need a very specific reform for this to kind of all fall into place, which we'll be able to get, and I've kind of designed a build for this to work around, which will allow us to not only spend 11 dip points per -3 aggressive expansion we're deleting, we're also going to, as part of this build, pick up some extra little special spicy tools on the side that's going to make it extra effective. Now, before we begin, as always, time for the usual stuff. A like on the video would be appreciated, and a subscription would be amazing. Timbuktu has been fighting back, and he remains a couple hundred subs ahead still. Thank you very much for the support so far. We are in this race due to your help, but to ensure victory, go on down below and hit that sub button if you haven't already. Anyway, enough self-shitting. Let's get rid of our aggressive expansion. And the key to our success is going to be none other than Dipmartian. See, nothing specifically about Dipmartian that we actually need. The main thing we're going to be using from Dipmartian is the fact that they start as a republic. Now, I'm going to suggest Dipmartian here, but frankly, anyone that has access to republics for the formation of Prussia will be viable for the strategy. Lübeck is also an option, however you mess around with the Hanseatic League, which I find can be annoying. Same for nations such as Hamburg. I will be doing this as Dipmartian due to my personal like of that nation, but again, any republic will work for this. Gotland, for example, is certainly also an option, if you go for the piracy route. See, the government reform that makes all of this possible is going to be, at Tier 7, the cultural administration. And to get there, we need 1,200 reform progress. To demonstrate, let me just take the reforms, and as you can see as I'm taking them, we're going to have exactly the amount we need to take the cultural administration right at the bottom here. This is obviously a decent chunk of government reform progress growth, and if you take a look at our passive gain at the moment, we're getting 1.66 each month. Because we have 0% average autonomy and we have a 100 Republican tradition. This means it will take us 60 years to get there conventionally. The problem, of course, is that the way that most people play republics, and this is the correct way of playing republics, is they tend to sacrifice a lot of their Republican tradition to re-elect. Furthermore, average autonomy is not going to be staying at zero, it's going to go up, frankly, a lot of the time, a lot. This is going to severely hinder your government reform progress gain, and that is bad for this run, very much so. Now, there's going to be events that you're going to get through this run where you're able to sacrifice government reform progress growth instead of taking, for example, a stab hit. Most people, I find, tend to sacrifice government reform progress growth. You're not going to be doing that. You need every single little bit of government reform progress you can get your hands on, because you need to get that Tier 7 reform ASAP. That also means any events that give you extra government reform progress growth, you're going to love and you're going to take them. You need them. With that, if you are insanely struggling with government reform progress, I would genuinely suggest going down plutocratic and taking the Bill of Rights for 0.1 monthly reform progress growth. I don't think it's going to save you if you're already struggling. You're probably going to still end up struggling, but it can be a little bit of a boost. Although bear in mind, for the ultimate version of this build, you will need 3 idea groups that are not going to be plutocratic as part of them. However, I have to bring it up as an option because it is there. The main thing to bear in mind, though, is, yes, you're going to really struggle with government reform progress growth to such an extent where I genuinely recommend just having 141 rulers for the first 60 years of the game and just maintaining this 10 at 100. Lower autonomy is also going to be a bit of a difficult thing to maintain. I'd suggest really focus on expansion through vassals and other types of expansion like that, as this will allow you to mitigate the high autonomy you get from conquering a brand new province that has a lot of base autonomy. Basically, it's not going to be easy, but you're going to need to do it. But by around 1500, so 60 years into the game, you should have the Tier 7 reform taken. And by this point, you should also have Tech 10, take the first 4 of administrative ideas at the minimum, as this gives you access to another minus 30% promote culture cost. You can see where this is going, and of course, become Protestant. Hussite will also work, again, you're just setting up for the Prussia formable. And on the topic of the Prussia formable, you will need to become Prussian, which will allow you to reform into Prussia. Now here, I would suggest you actually take new traditions and ambitions. This will abolish the Peasant Republic and put you into stratocratic administration, and ooh, nice, devotion to the people. But this means that you'll be able to go through your missions, namely to reclaim Newmark, get the Pomeranian succession, and finally, conquer Silesia, which will enable the mechanic where every time you promote a culture, you will reduce aggressive expansion with everyone by 3. Finally, for the funniest version of this build in question, or to really take it to the extreme, make sure you go ahead and finish administrative ideas, and then go ahead and grab defensive, followed by economic. As within administrative, you'll pick up 25% stab cost, and of course economic and defensive has a policy for minus 25% stab cost with public welfare. You can probably see where this is going. Prussia contains minus 10% stab cost modifier from the Prussian ideas. The pastors, when they're going to be loyal and influential, will give you a further 10% reduction, which means that you can also pick up the artist advisor for a final minus 10%, meaning that you're paying 20 monarch points per stab cost. Only gets even better, because, as you may have noticed, well, if it wasn't for that innovativeness, it would cost us 20 dip points to promote. What I would suggest you do is right near the edge of discovery, you go ahead and pop your golden age, as it should be just coming to a close, meaning that in the next 50 years, not only will you be stabbing up for 10 monarch points a pop at the bare minimum, you will also only be spending 11 monarch points, as you'll need to spend 1 to demote a culture every time you're promoting and demoting a culture. In terms of getting there, I'd suggest a large city, which requires you to get 30 development. I'd suggest ignoring control centers of trade and America, as that would require exploration and just too many side goals for this campaign. You should definitely have Renaissance, and for the final bonus, I'd suggest you go for a humiliation war, as it's significantly easier than trying to have 3 thrones or being present on 2 continents for a nation such as Prussia. Basically, just humiliate someone, dev to 30, and make sure you have the Renaissance, and you'll be good for a golden age. Now, I have 100% innovativeness because I cheated in technology and ideas for this demonstration, and this innovativeness works exactly the same way as the golden age would, giving me the same minus 10 power cost. Unfortunately, the caps are in place, so any innovativeness that you have is not going to make this cheaper for you. But there we go, we have 11 dip points, and as you can see, we're able to promote the Czech culture group and get rid of it. In this process, getting rid of 3 aggressive expansion. This means that for the loadout price of, say, for example, 550 dip, a decent collection, sure, you're able to, well, do this a couple times. This is fun, I'm having fun. Thank you, Paradox, what an amazing feature. Here, I've just done it 20 times, and I've just removed 60 aggressive expansion with everyone in Europe. And not just Europe, but the world. Peak balance. I've gone from a coalition to just not having one. You're able to get away from those standards by just burning 220 dip points, significantly cheaper than actually fighting it. And it gets even worse, because of course aggressive expansion is capped at minus 200. But that does mean that with this build, it will only take you 734 dip points to go from everyone hating you to the cap, because of how much you've aggressively expanded, to having 0 opinion about your aggressive expansion, which is frankly ridiculous. And just goes to show how, when Paradox added cultural regulations, again, a policy meant to be made as a filler because admin ideas were too strong and they needed to be nerfed, so they added more fillers, such as promote culture cost. They made it completely busted by allowing for this build to exist. Furthermore, by allowing stab cost to be stacked down to 10, you're able to truce break to your heart's content, and the aggressive expansion, again, will not really matter that much. A full-on truce break or no CB is going to set you back 30 or 50 admin points respectively, and you're going to be able to get rid of the aggressive expansion from that with minimal investments on dip points as well. What I love most about this is that it demonstrates that Prussia is such a good nation that it's able to truce break and have everyone in the world diplomatically happy without any diplomatic ideas taken in the process, which I find incredibly hilarious. But that is all I have time for today. Thank you very much for watching, with a special thank you to all of my YouTube members, especially Ark, Solar, Solemon, and W Haste.